Chemotherapy is one of the hardest things I've ever had to go through, but it has not only shaped the way that I see the world, but it also shaped the way that I see God and my faith. So my uncle was just diagnosed with the adult version of the disease that I have. His version is called AMN, adrenomyeloneuropathy. And because it's a genetic disease, me and my younger brother got tested. So we went into the doctor's office, and my dad promised that if we went in and got the blood draw, that we could go to Chuck E. Cheese afterwards. So I was 100% in. Did not take very much at all. So went in, and me and my brother got tested, got a red sucker, and left. And I thought that was it. Ended up finding out that I have the disease, the childhood cerebral version called adrenoleukodystrophy. Yeah. So what actually happens with the disease from a scientific perspective is my body couldn't break down very long chain fatty acids. So anything with a really high fat content, the actual strands of fat, my body couldn't break it down. So then those long strands of fat, when it couldn't go anywhere, go into any cells, be broken down and dispersed to the rest of the body, it would surround the myelin sheath in the nervous system and then start shutting down each part of the nervous system. So some kids, it starts with being blind. Some kids, they can't walk. It is going to be different for every child. For me, we don't know where it was going to go because mine hadn't progressed that far, because when I actually even had the bone marrow transplant about a year later, I was only 8. So most kids, if you don't ever catch the disease early enough, you'll be dead by age 10. So luckily mine was caught early enough and I hadn't really had any symptoms yet to where I was fine, but my uncle is blind and can't really walk. So it just depends on where you catch it. So the next thing that happens is we go to Baltimore to get some more testing done and end up getting on a trial study for a thing called Lorenzo's Oil. There was a movie that came out in the late 90s with Nick Nolte called Lorenzo's Oil, of this family that created this stuff on their own for their son who has the same disease that I have. So I tried that for a while and it didn't work. I had to have it twice a day. It was the most disgusting thing ever. We tried every which way to make it work. There's no way to make that stuff taste good. The other thing is I had to have an 18 grams of fat a day a diet, not 17 and a half, not 18 and a half. It had to be 18 grams of fat exactly per day. So if I go to a friend's house, I have to be able to count out each individual Cheez-It cracker. Or if I have to eat some chicken, I'm going to measure it by grams. Everything had to be an exact measurement, and did that for the entire time as well, which was very hard to get any protein. So I had to also eat 2 walnuts a day, which was really my only source of protein for however many months that was. Yeah. So after finding out that the Lorenzo's Oil didn't work for me, we ended up calling the best doctor who has done the most transplants for my particular disease. Unfortunately, that was in Minnesota. Like, it couldn't have been in Florida or something. That was very unfortunate when it was like middle of the winter of Minnesota. That was rough. But ended up calling him and saying, okay, if you had a child who had this disease, what would you do? And he said, I'd be here next week. So that's what we did. And we packed everything up and we were in Minnesota within the week, which was completely insane. I'm like about to start my 4th grade and we completely uprooted everything. So we head to Minnesota, and the rest of my family either stayed at the Ronald McDonald House or with me, depending on the night. I had a 5-year-old brother at the time, so he's still trying to live a life just like a regular 5-year-old, and he's running back and forth in the middle of the snow, which my parents were not super thrilled with, between the hospital and the Ronald McDonald House, and it was crazy. It was absolutely insane. I remember what my room looked like, or the baseball pennants I had on the wall. I remember some weird things, like the particular toothbrush that they used was this stick with a little like foam pink piece, but because of the chemo, my body and skin got so sensitive that my gums would bleed every time I would brush my teeth, or if I would take a shower, it felt like it was rocks hitting my back. So everything became way more sensitive, and I can feel what that felt like still. Or like if I would put a blanket over me, the entire way up my body, I can feel the entire thing. Every minute movement, shifting, everything. Where most of the time people wouldn't think about, if you're sitting in a chair, you can feel the fact that you're sitting in a chair if you intentionally feel about it. Or where your tongue is sitting in your mouth. You're not going to think about it unless you intentionally focus on it. I felt everything, and to the nth degree. So those are things I definitely remember. So post-transplant, I don't remember the exact timeline of it, but as soon as I got out of the hospital, which took a while, we finally got to come back because were doing regular checkups. Went from staying in the Ronald McDonald House and doing it from daily to weekly to monthly to now I don't even have to go back if I don't want to. But it was a very, very slow progression. For a while, I was wearing a mask, so I couldn't be around anything, including dust or anything, because it completely wiped out my immune system. So if there was anything around, that was going to severely compromise me very quickly. So I remember wearing the mask. I remember actually getting really hairy immediately afterwards, so I looked like a little monkey with a mask on. We got some pictures of that, and that was interesting to look back at. Definitely was very weak, so a lot of my friends would go outside and play wiffle ball and something in the backyard, and I would sit inside and want to go play, but there was no chance in the world that was going to happen. It was fifth grade when I actually got to really actually go back and start living life again. I remember when I finally got to take off my mask for the first time and go outside and actually play. That night we took all of the masks that I had and did a campfire and just started chucking those things. And like this was the worst. I've been wearing a mask for way too long at this point. Ended up eventually playing t-ball or coach's pitch. It was coach's pitch, but because I was so weak, I could be around the desk at that point, but then I was still too weak to do anything. So I could hit, but I couldn't run. Luckily, there was another kid on my team who broke his arm, so he couldn't bat, but he could run. It was the best dynamic duo. This kid was speedy fast. I could hit. That's the only part I wanted to do anyways. I hate cardio. This was great. It was awesome. I remember that it would be every few months to every 6 months, every year. It would just depend on how long in between was. It varied. The trip was forever long. Luckily, I had like my Nintendo DS or a Sudoku game or something to be able to keep me occupied. But that was about a 12-hour-ish drive every time. And even like during transplant, my dad's still working a full-time job, so he would be in Minnesota for like 3 days, drive overnight, come back here, work for like 3 days, and then go back. And I don't know how he actually lived. It's beyond impressive with how he pulled that off. So by seventh grade, I actually ended up full-time homeschooling. Didn't have a ton of friends in fifth or sixth grade. I was part-time during those 2 years. I was part-time homeschooled, part-time at school, and just couldn't really make any friends. Was still recovering from the fact that I spent so long in a hospital room by myself in a lot of really formative years where you would be able to figure out how social dynamics work and how to have conversations with people, and I missed out on all of those things. So I get to school as a part-time kid, I'm not even there full-time, and have no idea how to actually have friends. So seventh grade, I took it full-time homeschooled, and but I'm still way too extroverted. So eighth grade, I went full-time and haven't looked back after that. So I went to school at the King's Academy, which is actually now where I teach. So I get to teach at my alma mater, which is really fun. And I actually get to teach middle school, which is the time that I hated. So I get to hopefully help other kids not go through what I went through, which is awesome. But did a number of things, middle school and high school. So I was a part of drama club, did a number of different theater productions. Somehow they cast me in Seussical the Musical as Horton. Why they cast me as a 2-ton elephant when I look like this, not entirely sure what her thought process was, but it worked out well. Played Xerxes in Esther the Musical. Loved the musicals, loved to sing. So much fun. And then did things like playing the drums for chapel or playing on the basketball team, things like that. Yeah, so started in seventh grade playing basketball. Even as a homeschooler, they would allow you to come and play. And then by the time I got to high school, I was a starter from freshman on. So got to college, went to Indiana Wesleyan, and freshman year, first day, I just start living it up. So first day, I get on the floor with all the rest of my guys, and I'm a magician. I've been doing that for, 13 or so years now, and I just start doing card tricks for my entire floor. I've been there for like a half an hour. Me and those guys still talk to this day. So I am the talk of the campus. I ended up doing a talent show within the first week and winning, and I get to know everybody. Come in as a psychology and education double major, which I was like, this is going to be awesome. I love people. I love trying to figure out how people work. I love like games like Mafia. So anytime I get to kind of read people, poker, whatever, I'm always in. And then I get to be a teacher like my mom, and I love to be able to teach people. This is going to be great. Unfortunately, at that point, second semester, I shadow a middle school here in town, and it went horribly wrong. I thought this is the worst thing ever. If this is how teaching is going to look, I don't want anything to do with it. So switched my major in between freshman and sophomore year to psychology and social work to do relationship counseling as a double major. And honestly, I could still go back and do that and love it. I'm a massive hopeless romantic. I still write poetry. Like it's bad. Rom-coms are my favorite thing ever. It's bad. But in between my sophomore and junior year, I ended up working on a lot of stuff through YouTube. Had been doing that since my senior year of high school. But at that point, in between sophomore and junior year of college, is when it really started to take off. And I didn't know what to do. Now that I actually started making some money and started producing some products, like I'm going to commit tax fraud. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not built for jail. Somebody help me. So ended up switching over to psychology with a business administration minor, which is where I ended up graduating.
Short version.
Yeah, so the YouTube channel is called Card Perfect Magician. And then the cards I came out with in between those 2 years was called Descendants Playing Cards. And I've loved every minute of it. I didn't originally start it trying to make money from it. I just knew that I was learning so many card tricks at the time that I was going to forget them all. So it was more for me to look back on and try to make sure I can always remember them when I forget. And then when it started to kind of take off on its own, I started figuring out, like, wait a second, I can figure out as an achiever, which is always how my mindset is, I can figure out ways to be able to improve this. And then I start figuring out all the analytics and all the nitty gritty. Okay, well, if I make the background blue in the video, or if it's red, is that going to change things? So the psychology in me went off, and it's been so much fun to be able to figure all that stuff out. So I've been working at that this channel's been up for 6 years now, something like that. So they're called Chainbreaker playing cards. It's a deck that's part from Magician, so it's a marked deck where you can read the faces based off the back design. And then it's also the main reason I created this deck is for Christians as a tool to be able to share your faith. So one thing I've found, especially when talking with a lot of my students or the people at college or anything like that, is one of the hardest parts of sharing your faith is just starting the conversation. Once you're in it, it becomes a whole lot easier. But how do you start the conversation with someone you don't know? Like, have you ever heard about Jesus before? Like, how do you start that actual conversation? So having something like a deck of cards that has a lot of things in it. So like the court cards have their hands chained together. The back design has a bunch of chains and broken chain pieces on it. The motto for the deck, which is on one of the extra cards instead of a joker, says, "Our chains broke when he did," and has two hands pulling apart a chain, and there's holes in the back of the hands, symbolizing it was Jesus after the cross. So it's a really faith explicit deck that it's much easier to be able to spark a lot of those conversations.
Great.
And that's going to be dropping in the first Tuesday of May.
Okay, cool.
Teaching, again, was not supposed to be the goal. So I thought that I was going to do something with psychology. I hadn't even figured it out. Then I was actually in college for 5 years. So I'm 4 years in, first senior year, and still have no idea what I want to do. So I get to that point, and King's Academy calls me up because I'd subbed for them a number of times. And they say, hey, we have an elective class that we don't have anybody to teach for. We need somebody to teach something, and you've subbed for us a couple times. Do you have anything you'd want to teach? And I said, well, I have a curriculum on sleight of hand that I was planning on selling as an online course. And I hadn't actually done it yet, still haven't, because I've been having so much fun teaching. And I was like, would you mind if I just taught this to the middle school? And they said yes, which I didn't think they would. So I got to teach a class on card tricks and sleight of hand and cardistry and playing cards, and had a ball, to a point to where I'm like, I need to do this full time. So then this past year, right after I graduated, with about a month before graduating, they let me know they had a full-time position open, and I applied for it and got it. So now I teach a Bible class and PE and some classes for just like the sixth graders on self-efficacy and planning and organizing, the stuff that you need to survive high school, things like that. So meeting her was not planned at all.
So start back a little bit.
Yep. So this is the Tuesday before I graduate that we met. I actually got the job and met her within 2 weeks of each other. So the last month of college was outrageously insane for me. Trying to do finals, getting a job, and now meeting my now fiance. So it's the Tuesday before finals week. I have less than 2 weeks left until I'm gone. And there's an app called Yik Yak, which is basically anonymous Twitter for colleges. And I was on there all the time. I think I still have like the 5th highest score. It was just corny dad jokes. The post I made just prior to meeting her said, while I was at a coffee shop today, somebody stole my glasses. And then I made the first comment and said, I was robbed blind. Right? Just corny, stupid dad jokes. My other favorite one that I posted was, what do you get when you cross a joke with a rhetorical question? Right? They're just corny, stupid, whatever. And I think it's hilarious. So the one day, me and my 3 brothers are going to Fort Wayne to get his engagement ring for his now fiance. And we're driving there, and on the way, I made a post, and it had 4 bullet points and a question. It said, woman, godly, curvy, cute, is this too much to ask? And I just thought, this is funny, and I agreed with it, but I just thought it was a funny thing to say and posted it. She had just woke up from a nap that day after working 12-hour shift at a hospital in Indianapolis. So she had driven an hour and a half there, worked for 12 hours, driven an hour and a half back, and is exhausted. Wakes up from a nap, rolls over, checks Yik Yak, sees the post, and just types, no, I'm here. And that was it, and just left a comment there. I look at that, and I'm like, wait a second. I should respond to this. Now, at this point, this could be anybody. This could be some 300-pound football player. It could be anybody. It's anonymous. So I'm texting this random person, have no idea who it is. She sends me her Instagram. She's beautiful. So this is actually a real person because she texts me from the Instagram account. We talk the entire time, all the way till we get back into Marion. As we pull in, it's 6:45 at night by the time I get back to IWU. And at that point, we had planned to get coffee 2 days later on that Thursday. I'm like, I have like a week and a half until I graduate. Why am I waiting till Thursday? So I text her. I already had her number at that point. And I say, what are you doing tonight? She goes, nothing. I said, great, I'll meet you in 15 minutes over at the coffee shop. She's in her PJs. She was planning on going to bed. So she's stressing out, calling her mom. I've got a date tonight. I didn't know I had. Running around like crazy. We both get there at 7. And she says, let me back up 1 second. When I first started texting her on Yik Yak, my opening line was, let's start with the most important emotional question. How do you feel about red velvet cake? So when she first met me at McCon, she said, so besides red velvet cake, what are your other non-negotiables? And as the OCD planner that I am, I have a list on my phone. So I hand her my non-negotiables list of everything that I need in a wife. So either beliefs or personality traits like intentionality or desires like wanting kids or something like that. And she reads the whole thing. She's like, I've got nothing. That works great for me. And then pulls out a list of her own and hands me her non-negotiable list. And I read through the same thing, had no questions. We were there for 4 hours. I'd literally never seen her before. Truly just think it was God blinding the two of us, because with her being that beautiful, I would have already asked her out. And we're there for 4 hours. I walk her outside. We're there because it started pouring down rain, so we hop underneath a tree at a bench outside the library until 1:30 in the morning. I walk her back. There's a gazebo outside of her dorm. So as we're walking back, I ask her to take off her backpack and put it under the gazebo. It's pouring down rain. I put AirPods in both of our ears and we slow danced in the rain to music. That's what I thought happened. What actually happened, that she did not tell me until the song was done, was that her AirPod was dead. So the entire time she's swaying in the rain with a guy that she's never met before with no music at all. She's like, well, I just wanted him to be able to have his moment. I was like, I think I'm killing it. I'm like, this is the most like romantic thing I've ever done before. Slow dancing in the rain with a girl I've just met hours earlier. Her AirPod was dead. But after that, ended up getting engaged about 3 months later, and we'll be getting married in about 98 days from now or so.
Cool.
Yeah. So the main impact that it has on me today, because a lot of the stuff that other kids have, I don't. I'm the #1 person in the world with my disease at my age. Nobody else really has ever gone through college with my disease, with the childhood cerebral version. It's just unheard of. To be able to do the things that I've done, play basketball, it just doesn't happen. So one of the things that does happen, the reason is the childhood cerebral version, is I actually have a lesion in my brain. I think it's on my amygdala. So I have it where my sense of direction should have been. So I'm horrible with direction. Granted, it feels like a blessing where a lot of other people have that where their eyesight should be. So my uncle isn't blind because his eyes are bad. He's blind because of where the lesion sits. So it's the connection between the two. His eyeballs are perfectly fine. So for me, it's where my sense of direction should be, but we have Google Maps. So it feels like a blessing, even though it's not what I would have wanted. Some of the hardest things about that, though, is the fact that Iowa's campus isn't small. It's small for a college, but for somebody who has this problem, it was really, really tough to a point to where I would need to be able to drive to go somewhere, to a meeting, to a class. I can't find my car. And I would wander around campus for an hour just trying to find it. And that would be so unbelievably frustrating. So if I wanted to go anywhere, I had to leave an hour early to go find my car before I can actually attempt to go to class or anything else. So if I have a 7:50 in the morning class, I'm waking up at 5:30 because I just don't know if I'm going to be able to get there on time. So that one's been really difficult, admittedly so. It's been really frustrating at times, but in comparison to a lot of other people with what some other people have, again, it's hard to complain about it.
Yeah.
So one of the biggest things came from a quote that I heard. It said, God doesn't do all things, but he can work through all things. Because we live in a fallen world where a lot of these things weren't supposed to exist. We weren't supposed to have war. We weren't supposed to have disease. All the things that happened because of the fall in Genesis 2, these weren't supposed to happen. So I know that I'm not saying that God didn't give me the disease, because he could have, knowing what the outcome would have been. But he might not have. This might just be due to the fall of humanity and due to sin. So I don't have, God is all knowing, not me. So what is my right to be able to blame him for it? It's his glory, not mine. In our weakness, he's strong. The amount of times that Gideon's army had 300 people, he started with 32,000, brought it to 22,000, got rid of 22,000, brought it to 10, got rid of another 9,700, facing an army of the Midianites with 135,000 versus 300. That was his goal, is to say, it has nothing to do with you. It's only because of my power. And I feel the same way. I feel so blessed with the fact that God has done this work in me and through me, and because of that, I get to tell my story to other people of how he's blessed me. But there's no way for me to hold it against him, because I'm not God. I haven't seen the work that he's done on the front end. It feels kind of like a Job situation. Job didn't know. He never ended up finding out. Whether it was a parable or not is irrelevant. Job didn't know the conversations that God had before the whole thing started. And the fact that he had the conversation with Satan, that whole thing happened, had nothing to do with Job in the first place. So because of that, the belief that I have that God can do miracles, I pray bigger prayers than I ever would have if I didn't have the disease. For 5 years, I was allergic to dairy. I couldn't have a drop of it. One day, this would have been my junior year of high school, I was in my room and doing a devotion on miracles. And I was sitting there after 5 years of this, and I'm like, I keep on saying that I believe it, but then never do anything about it. So I prayed about it, went upstairs, and had 3 bags of M&Ms and some Andes Mints, which would have put me down for days. 2 days later, I had a glass of milk and some bunch of cheese and nachos and everything, and have been fine ever since. Where most people wouldn't actually pray that. And that has nothing to do with me. I can't cure myself of that, obviously. But I think people underestimate how much prayer can actually do. The amount of times in Scripture where people prayed and changed the heart of God is ridiculous. God's about to destroy this whole city, and then one person prays and he goes, you know what, you're right. I'll back off. I appreciate you praying to me and asking me to not destroy them and to give them grace and mercy, and I'll hold my wrath from them. We can change the heart of God, and we have that direct access to him. And I don't think I ever would have had a faith to be able to pray bold prayers the way that I do if God wouldn't have given me something or allowed me to have something like ALD. Her name's Addison.
Okay.
Which actually is a little bit ironic as well. So I have actually 2 diseases. The first one is ALD. The second one is actually called Addison's disease.
Oh my goodness.
So, it feels a little bit ironic or like a blessing. So the one half is a disease, the other half is my fiance. So that's just a little funny quirk, but yeah, she's incredible.